we had yesterday. I'll run the project from what we had yesterday, minus some edits I did at the end of lecture. So here, yesterday, we got introduced to table views. We also did a table view warm-up exercise this morning, right? So yesterday, we got introduced to table views. Here we have a dynamic table view of content. The content we have is countries. So we have a countries array, right? And at the end of lecture, we were able to add in what's known as a UI bar button item to change the sorting algorithm on that particular array. So it could sort descending, meaning alphabetical wise from Z to A. Descending is from Z to A. Or it could be ascending from A to Z. So when we say ascending, America is first. When we say descending, Ukraine is first, right? So this is what we did yesterday. Today, we'll continue on with that same project. Today, we will see what's known as a tab bar controller. So when you're doing multiple MVC, where you have multiple views and view controllers, we could introduce a next container class called tab bar controller, UI tab bar controller. We've seen UI navigation controller. Today, we'll also see what's known as UI tab bar controller. So we'll basically use the code or use that view controller that we used yesterday along with a new view controller today. So we'll have two tabs. The first tab will have this particular table view, and the second tab will have our new view controller. So let's go ahead, let's go to storyboard and set that up, right? So we'll go to storyboard. We'll go to storyboard. Okay. Let me get some more space going on here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to embed this navigation controller in what's known as a tab bar controller. So a tab bar controller basically is a container controller. It will have multiple tabs. We'll see what the tabs look like in code. Let's actually see if Apple shows us a diagram of tab bar controller. It would be nice if it showed it in the document. Ah, great. Perfect. Thank you, Apple. So here we're going to be introduced to what's known as the UI tab bar controller, right? Again, its parent class is a UI view controller. The parent class of a UI navigation controller is still a UI view controller. Okay, they're all inherit from UI view controller. So here we have a UI tab bar controller. I will slide that over to us. Right? So here, as we said, it's a container view controller that manages a radio style selection interface. Can we see in the back? Can we see in the back? All right, so here we have a UI tab bar controller, and as pictured here, at the bottom, I have 5 tabs. Do we see the 5 tabs in the bottom? Right, in the bottom here of our clock app, right? This is the clock app on iOS. We have 5 tabs. The first tab is world clock, followed by alarm, followed by bedtime, stopwatch, and timer. Do we all see the tabs at the bottom? Right? So that here is managed, it's managed by a tab bar controller. That tab bar controller has 5 child view controllers. So a tab bar controller could have many children, right? If you're using a tab bar controller, you want to have at least 2 children, right? Other than that, there's no point of having a tab bar controller, right? Because a tab bar controller is to be managed or helps you manage different tabs, right? So here we have a tab bar controller with 5 tabs, right? Cool? So that's what we will be doing today. And we'll have 2 tabs. The first tab will be our first countries table controller. And the second one will be a sections countries view controller. Yes, each one of those tabs has a view controller, right? And the view controller has a view, right? Every view controller has a view. And each of our tab bar controller children will have a navigation controller. We'll see what it looks like in UI, but now I'm just talking about what the thing is. But we'll see what it looks like in UI. What else do they show us here? Okay, cool. So again, this is UI tab bar controller. Let us go over to our Xcode and model that out. So in my interface builder, in Storyboard, I'll click on my navigation controller. Click on your navigation controller. On the first controller here, the navigation controller, which is also a container controller. I'll click on the navigation controller. I'll go to embed here. I'll go down to my embed button. Do we see tab bar controller? Click tab bar controller. Click on tab bar controller. So here we have a lot of things going on. We have a tab bar controller, which is now that root controller. It has one tab right now. That tab is a navigation controller, and our navigation controller points to our view controller. So far, so good? Great. Yes. We added it by clicking on, let me Control Z. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So Luba, we added it by clicking on the navigation controller. We go down to embed here, so I zoom in. Do we see where the embed button is? At the bottom of our constraints area, click on embed. Do you see tab bar controller? Click tab bar controller. Now our navigation controller has been embedded in a tab bar controller. Okay? So far, so good? So if you want your UI to be very similar to like Instagram's UI, where it has multiple tabs at the bottom, or the clock app like we saw, to control multiple MVCs or multiple view controllers, right? We use a tab bar controller, right? Everybody? We use a tab bar controller for that. So far we've seen a UI view controller, we've seen a navigation controller, and today we've seen a tab bar controller. What does a tab bar controller have? It has children. Those children could be a navigation controller. They could be view controllers. Okay? Excellent. So now you could actually drag around your tab bar controller. You could drag it down. We'll add a second view controller. That's why I'm dragging it down here. Let me zoom in so we could see what's happening. So our intention is to create a second navigation controller that points to a view controller. So our tab bar controller will have two tabs. This is the intention, right? This is our intention. Let's go ahead and drag in a view controller. So go to your object library, search for view controller. Search for view controller in your object library. Drag it in. Cool. How can we embed a navigation controller? How can we embed this view controller in the navigation controller? How do we do that? How do we do it at Tiffany? How do I embed this new view controller in a navigation controller? Shania. So we click on embed. So Shania says we click on embed. So make sure your view controller is selected. The new one is selected. You go down to the constraints area and you click on embed. And what do we select? We select navigation controller, correct? Cool? The navigation controller gives you access to the navigation bar. Without a navigation controller, you do not have that navigation bar. That's basically what it gives you. It gives you the navigation bar. The tab bar gives you the bottom bar. Right? So far, so good? Yeah. Right? So if you want to have your navigation, you want to navigate from view A to view B. You want to have a back button. You want to have a title. The only way to get it is a navigation controller. Okay? You want to have tabs at the bottom. The only way to get that is embed your view controllers in a tab bar controller. Cool? Great. Why would we need a title? The back button. You don't get the back button with a tab bar controller. When you navigate from view A to view B, like in our app on Friday, if you don't have a navigation bar, you won't have a way to go back. Basically, what the navigation controller does, it pushes its view controllers onto a stack. Pushing is the name. And when we go back, it pops. So without the navigation controller, you don't have access to the back button. Okay? And if you don't have access to the back button, the navigation becomes different. No longer can you push or slide in. You'll have to be sliding up, which is a different navigation, which we haven't spoken about. Okay? For now, if you want to push, where you click on button A, on view A, and you want to push it, meaning you want to slide over to a different view controller, it has to be in a navigation controller. That's the only way you get that functionality of to push a view onto that navigation controller stack. All right? If you have a tab bar controller without a navigation controller, you won't get the back button. Okay? Everybody? Everybody? Okay, cool. Now, we have our tab bar controller here. I want to connect my tab bar controller to my navigation controller. Anybody has any clues as to how to do that? Control drag, our favorite thing, right? We love control dragging. So we'll control drag, according to it down here, from my tab bar controller. I'll control drag from my tab bar controller and connect it to my navigation controller. Let's go ahead and do that. So control drag from my tab bar controller over to my navigation controller. Let's zoom in here and see the options we have. It's not going to be a manual segue. It's going to be a relationship. Do we see relationship? The relationship or the connection will be a relationship where it's a view control. You see view controllers here? A tab bar could have many view controllers, as we said. In the clock app, how many view controllers do we have? 5. Instagram, how many tabs do we have? 4. Look at that. Oh, she just knows it by heart. Man. Right? So here we have view controllers, meaning I could have many children. A tab bar controller could have many children. Right? In that case, we'll have 2 children. That's why we have view controllers here. The property on a tab bar, there's a property on tab bar dot view controllers. How many children do you have? Cool? So now we're about to create a new child. We're about to create a new child for our tab bar controller. So we select view controllers. Okay? Cool? And now we have a connection. With that connection, now we have how many tabs? 2 tabs. Right? We have 2 tabs now. Hello.
I don't know if I did something wrong, but I'm on Nova.
You solved it. Magic. All right. So this is what our storyboard looks like. We have 5 views or 5 scenes. The main scene is the tab bar controller. The tab bar controller has how many children? 2 children. And our navigation controller has 1 view controller at the top. The bottom navigation controller also has 1 view controller as well. Cool? We can actually test our app now. Go ahead and Command R, run your application. Well, it was very loud there for a second. Cool. So run your app. How many tabs does our app have? 2, right? They both say item. We'll fix what that says later. But right now we have 2 tabs. If we click on the second tab, what happens? It's empty. Makes sense? We don't have any elements there. Right? Our first tab has our countries table view. Right? Our second tab is empty because we haven't set anything there. We have to set a class to manage the view controller like we did before. Right? So let's go ahead and do that. First of all, let's change the item name. Let me zoom in. So select where the item, let's see, select, let's go to the tab bar controller and the attribute inspector, and we should have access to the item. Who wants to change the item? This guy wants to change the item. Okay, select your first view controller, or navigation controller, sorry. Select the first navigation controller at the top. Select the bottom bar. Select the bottom bar and make sure your attributes inspector is open. Make sure your attributes inspector is open. Do we see where it says title? So we could simply change that title to whatever title name we want. We'll simply call this one, yeah, countries is good. So the next one is going to be continents. So call this one countries. Thank you, sir. We could give it an image. Let's see if we could get an SF image here. Let me get an image. Not one. Can I get one dot circle? Excellent. So for the image, search for one dot circle. This is an SF symbol. Again, new to iOS 13. Before we would have to go to a website to get an icon, whatever. Now the thing is just built in. It's great. So here I could just use this one dot circle icon for my image for now. And let's go ahead and do the same thing for the second one. So go down to your second navigation controller, click on the bar. For the second navigation controller, click on the bar. Go back to your attribute inspector. Yeah. So the second one for the item, call it continents, as Tiffany is saying. For the image, search two dot circle. That's good enough for now. So our title is continents. The image is two dot circle, which is an SF symbol. Cool. Great. Let's run our app again to confirm the change. Okay, so our app is running. We have our countries tab here. Right, we have our countries tab. My countries is spelled wrong, sorry. And we have continents tab. Cool. I spelled countries wrong here. Let me fix that. Cool. All right. Excellent. Okay, so let's keep working on, or let's work on our second view controller. We don't have a second view controller yet, but we could work on the actual UI. So let's zoom in here and work on the second UI. Same as we did earlier today and yesterday, we'll drag in a table view. We'll drag in a table view, so go to the object library, search for table view, drag in a table view. This time we'll be using the bar here. We'll use the top bar as the top guide. So the top bar, don't go beyond the top bar. Your table view should be right at the bottom bar. And leading edge, right? So bottom bar, leading edge, right? Everybody? Cool. Now go ahead and drag your table view so that it touches the bottom bar and trailing edge of the super view. And set the constraints for your table view. It should be 0 all around. So for my table view, 0 to the top or the bottom of the top bar, 0 to the leading of my super view, 0 to the trailing of my super view, 0 to the top of the bottom bar. Everybody? Cool? And when we're ready, we add 4 constraints. Cool. What is the next step with our table view? What do we do next? What's that, Andy? Add a cell. How do we add a cell? We click on our table view. We go to the attributes inspector. Right where it says prototype cells, we add a prototype cell. We only need one prototype cell. Again, you could have other prototype cells based on the designer or based on what you want your app UI to look like. Right? One cell could have an image on the left. A next cell could have the image on the right. A next cell could have the image in the center, right? And so forth, right? Well, a table view. Just a table view. We drag the table view from the object library. You could also create a cell, yes. Yes, you could also drag a cell. Which one is faster? This one is pretty much faster, right? You just add one. But you could also drag in a cell from the library. Cool? All right, great. So let us continue on. What's our next step? What's that? Select the cell and give it a reuse identifier. Thank you, Luba. So I selected my cell, not my table view. I selected my cell. Make sure you have that little box show up here. Select your cell. Select your cell. Make sure it says table view cell here in the attributes inspector. We go in and edit it. and we'll simply call it, we'll call it same country cell. It's still a country. They won't conflict with each other because there'll be different view controllers. Up to you. It's not a continent, it's going to be a country. You could edit it, you could leave it the same. It's fine. So here we have country cell. I press enter. Country cell, I press enter. Great. Where do we control drag to? Do we control drag to our view controller? Do we have a view controller? What's the next step here? What do we do? Any ideas? What's the next step? What do we do next? We need to connect our table view somewhere to some view controller. Make a new file, right? So Shania says make a new file. That's the answer I was looking for. Right now, we do not have a class to manage this view controller, this view. We do not have a class to manage that scene. Where's the class? We don't have it. We need to create it, right? So here, we did not create the view controller because one was given to us yesterday. Yesterday, when we created our application, there was a view controller already. Everybody? But today, we created our own view controller. We need to have a class for it. So let's go ahead and create a class for it. So I'll create a class, Command N, to bring up the new file dialog. Command N. I select CocoaTouch class. I select CocoaTouch class. If it's a Swift file, we need to go ahead and import UIKit, because Swift file, by default, it imports Foundation. Right, Shania? By default, it imports Foundation, and it doesn't subclass from anything. If we use a CocoaTouch class and we subclass from UI view controller, for free, we get the view load. We also get a class view controller that inherits UI view controller. So we get a bunch of boilerplate code for free. That's what we get. Boilerplate code for free. You could do Swift file by yourself, but you have to go ahead and do the extra code yourself. Cool? So here we'll select CocoaTouch class. We'll click next. For the subclass, make sure it says UI view controller, because that's the class we're subclassing. Our class will subclass UI view controller. For the class name, we'll call it continents. Continents view controller. For the class name. When we're ready, we click next. Make sure you have target selected here where it says targets. Make sure that's selected. Make sure it's selected. And then click on create. So Shania, what do we get when we say CocoaTouch class? We get our class automatically inherits from UI view controller. Also, it imports UIKit as opposed to Foundation. Foundation does not have UI view controller. Okay. Next, we also get this view load as a boilerplate code. We also get that when we say CocoaTouch class. Okay. We also get this prepare for segue here, which we might get into today or tomorrow based on where we are. But for now, let's delete that block of code. Let us delete this comment as well, right? And now I will Command A just to format my code, Control I. You don't have to do that step, that's fine. So here we have our continents view controller. Basic view controller. In it, we have view load. We could actually take out view load and do it ourselves just to get in the habit of doing it. So here we have a class, nothing in the class. Okay? Nothing in the class. Cool. So let's go to our storyboard. Click on your storyboard. Bring up the assistant. Bring up the assistant for your storyboard. Okay. And make sure you have your bottom view controller selected. So make sure it's the bottom view controller. So we have the top view controller here, right? Which is countries, everybody, right? The bottom view controller, let's actually give it a name. Let's just give it a title. So for the title, I will click on the nav title for my table view here, and I'll call this title Continents. So the bottom view controller, the title, we'll call it Continents. Continents, right? 1 second, let me go back, sorry. Continents, enter, what did I select? So you have your navigation controller, right? I'm talking about the bottom two view controllers. You have a navigation controller, and the second one, you have the one we just pulled in, correct? You click on the top of it where the bar is, the top bar. It brings up the attributes inspector, and you edit the title. Cool? Excellent. Cool? So far, so good? Continents. The title was Continents. Okay? Click on your navigation controller. The navigation controller manages our Continents view controller. Click on the navigation controller tab. Click on the navigation controller tab, and let's make our title large. So where it says prefers large titles, click on it. Click on prefers large titles. That comes up if you click on the bar for navigation controller. Make sure it says navigation controller. Click on the bar, go to attributes inspector, and click on prefers large titles. Let's run and just make sure our app is responding based on what we changed. Again, run frequently as you make changes. Where are you, simulator? We need to set it up. We haven't set it up yet. We need to connect it. We need to change the class in Identity Inspector. Cool. 1 second. This is. Were you able to see your simulator? Did your continents title come up? All right, great. So let my simulator understand what's happening. All right, for now, let's go ahead and change, because Eric's question is, what's supposed to be coming up when we select continents? Right now, the correct class does not come up. We need to connect our view scene to the correct class. We do that by clicking on your view controller. So make sure your continents view controller is selected. Make sure your continents view controller is selected. We go to the Identity Inspector, which is next to the Attributes Inspector, Identity Inspector. We all should just have a class that says UI View Controller, correct? So we need to change UI View Controller to what? Continents, very good. So we put in continents here. Continents, press enter. Continents, press enter. Make sure you press enter and make sure where it says inherit module is selected. Okay. At this point, if you, let's actually go back to, click on the continents view controller in the navigation bar here. Click on continents view controller. Click back on your storyboard. And click on your continents view controller. If it does not come up, simply go to where it says automatic here. Let's zoom in. Do we all see automatic? Click on automatic. Click on automatic. Do we see continents view controller? Do we see continents view controller now? Click on it, and now it should come up correctly, right? So this class here is managing this scene, right? Our continents view controller is managing our continents view controller scene. Great. Next step. You click on your continents view controller. If it doesn't come up, if it doesn't come up, you want to click on where it says automatic here in the top bar. Do you see automatic? What's that? Do you see manual? Yeah, the assistant should come up. Yeah, yeah. Mel, did you get it? All right, so we all have our continents view controller next to our storyboard, correct? All right, cool. Let us continue. So now we're going through the motion of connecting our table view, right? So I'll give you guys a head start. Go ahead, connect your table view to your storyboard. I mean, connect your table view to your continents view controller. Connect it. Call it table view, and go through creating the extension. Go through creating the protocol methods, number of rows, number of sections. Sorry, number of rows and cell for row. So basically, we want to connect our table view to our continents view controller. So minus me doing it, let's get a head start and do it again. So we need to get used to doing it. Yours is at the bottom, right? I need to help you do that later. Make sure you pull me into that, right? It's at the bottom right now, so drag it at the bottom. All right, so we have some to-dos here. What's our to-dos? To-do items. Control or connect. Yes, but put it back. Wait, yes. So yes, very good. So connect the table view using an IB outlet. Right, so we need to do that. Step 1, step 2, set the view controller as the data source for the table view. Step 3, in view load. Step 3, use an extension on the continents view controller and conform to UI table view data source. Yes. So simply just typing in viewed load, calling super viewed load will get you that. Any questions? We know what we're doing, right? So we have some steps here. So step 3, use an extension to conform. Step 4, implement required methods. What's the data? The data for our project. Yeah, so no, we're using the same struct. So the data comes from our country struct. That's where the data comes from, right? Yeah, so you have to, step 1, create an outlet for the table view, right? So your table view needs an outlet. So IB outlet week var table view UI. You could actually type it out like that if you want and connect it afterwards. That's a thing. The next thing, so we did step 1. This is step 1. I still need to connect it. Like did already connect it. Well, somebody doesn't know about somebody. What's happening? Table view. Why are you mad?
Is that the first one or maybe the first one?
That's the first one. Let me double check that it actually is managed by it. Continents view controller. Enter. It's not happy about that. Let me see one thing. Use the document outline. I have a table view here. Nope. It could be that I need to close Xcode and reopen Xcode. Yeah, but I won't do that for now. I'll do it. Close it, reopen it. Wow, look at it. Ooh, too many files open.
If you just stop it and then rebuild it, because sometimes I work.
With that particular bug, it might be better to close Xcode and reopen it because it could be a memory bug on Xcode's part. Because already it's not seeing my table view and I do have the connection. So same with you. You have issues with Xcode where you see what you're doing should work. Close, reopen. Doesn't hurt. Except what? It's blinking right now? Oh, yeah. I know. Exactly. All right, so I'm back here. I'm back here with my table views class. And now my storyboards are all black. See that? This morning, yes. But the more you do it, the better. Because it's one of those things, it's just practice. So the more you do it, the better. Yes, sir.
So when I started doing the extension and setting the UI table view source, it affected my original view controller.
There are separate view controllers.
Yeah, I'm saying when I did it for my original view controller in-house, it said it was done like.
Did you drag it to the same view controller? Or you drag it to the continents? Are you dragging a table view cell? You're probably dragging a table view cell. Make sure you're dragging in a table view, another table view cell. It's going to, we'll be making the continents. That's part of the exercise today. Yeah, we don't have enough data. We have the data, but we need to go through the data to make the continents. For the number of rows for now, just return 0. Ay, ay, ay. For the number of rows for now, just return 0 while I get this thing sorted out. Okay, so get to my continents class here. Okay, so the step 1 we did. Step 2, set the view controller as the data source, right? So my view controller, I say table view. I say table view dot data source equal to self, right? We do that. This is step 2 here. This is step 2, right? Step 3, use an extension. Step 3, I'll use an extension outside my class. Outside of my class, I'll use an extension on my continents view controller. I will conform. What are we conforming to? UI table view data source. Right? Next step, I am implementing my number of rows. Number of rows in section. For now, we'll return simply, just return 10, for example. We could actually test this out by just returning 10. My next function is self for row. For self for row, what's the first line in my self for row? What's my first line? Get a cell, right? So get a cell using the table view dot dequeue reuse identifier. We have country cell as the reuse identifier, and we pass in index path, lower index path, right? Make sure index path here is a lowercase I. We could simply return cell. Yes, most likely. All right, so cool, we have a cell, we have returning 10, and simply for every cell, I could say cell dot, this is just testing purposes, cell dot text label dot text equal to, I could simply say index path dot row plus 1. So here I could say row, this is just for testing again. Come on, up. So we're just testing our table view. There's no data yet. So we'll just be testing our table view by simply printing out row 1, row 2, row 3, etc. This is what we're doing on line 45. Line 40 simply just returns 10. We'll refactor this later. When we get our continents, we'll return what the continents count is. But for now, to just get up and started with our table view, we're returning some default values, some hard-coded values. What's that? What's the question? At this point, if you have your table view, you should be able to run it and do see row 1, row 2, etc. Right? If you connected your table view to your view controller, you should be able to run your code, click on your second tab, and see row 1. Right? Did yours work? Did you see it? Do you see the rows on your second tab? Great. So let's do this. So this is step 3. I'll put it right here. And this is step 4. I'll put it right here. Yeah, we're doing sections. Part of it is that we have to set up the table. Everybody, you guys still have this? Is it not working? Yes. Not even the extension, but unless you conform to it. Yeah. Whenever we see DQ reusable cell, go through the motions. Is your cell registered correctly? For example.
Are we supposed to name the constant of the cell to see?
You would name it the same. It's not going to conflict. I'm coming here. Use the console to see what the error is. Go on the web. It's probably something in the cell. You have to register the cell. So here. Or the table here. Do you delete the table here? Why is it? Yeah, we'll try that. Okay. Let me see if my storyboard is back. Is it? It flashed for a second. How are we doing? Did you guys connect? I saw people with their rows, right? Right? All right, let me see if mine actually performs now. Okay, so let me try to connect this guy again. You see, a typical use case. Remember before I dragged, it was not connecting? Xcode bug. You close Xcode, you open it, or you restart the computer, whatever you need to do. Part of being a developer is having a high-end machine. That machine is not as high-end as it should be, right? The memory is not as big as it should be, right? All those things. Ideally, you want to have like a 16 gig RAM memory in your computer because Xcode is a big piece of software. It takes a lot of resources. If I have Slack running, which I do have Slack running, I have a lot of programs running. It's heavy resourced, right? So I'll fall into issues like that. Cool? All right, so let's connect my table view to my continent storyboard. Let me run. At this point, I should have completed all my tasks. Let's see my simulator runs. Eric, was your table view working? Good. Scroll down some more. Here. Okay, so I'm running my simulator, not on my device. Sorry, I accidentally ran it on the device. I may have missed something here. Whenever we see errors like those, try to really see what the error is saying. Sorry. Most likely my cell is not set up. Did I set up my cell? Country cell here. Let me go to my storyboard. Oh, I think that's the issue we had, right? The storyboard was crashing. Crash again. Okay, I know where the cell is. I know where the cell is. Xcode, I know where the cell is. All right, so I go to my attributes inspector. I need to have an identifier. Your app crashes, most likely it's coming from here, right, Amini? Where my identifier, I think I have my identifier, but I don't have my identifier, right? In my head, I have my identifier, but here Xcode tells me I do not have an identifier. So it's going to crash the app. Make sure you have an identifier in here. For mine, it's country cell. I press enter. Well, in that case, if I go to identify and I do not see anything, Xcode is correct. All right, let's run it again. Are you gonna not launch? Am I gonna launch this on my phone? My simulator. Was that? Say that again, Majed? Oh, 1 second, sorry. Scroll down. When I'm gonna make a new Xcode, unable to boot simulator. Look at that. Yes, question. There's a bigger issue with that. The table view needs to be reconnected. Your table view needs to be reconnected because it's looking for that connection and it don't have a connection. I'm rebooting my simulator because there's a bug with my simulator. So just hold on. While we wait for that, we could actually update our country. So let's go to the country model and do the heavy lifting of that actual project we have to build today. Go to your country struct, navigate over to your country struct, and we need to write a new function. We need to write a function that basically creates the sections for us. Right now, we have a country struct. It returns us a flat array. It returns us a flat array. We need to have some sort of function or property returning us an array of arrays. For our section to work, we need to have an array of arrays. We need to have a continents array, for example. In that continents array, right, each continent has its own countries. Everybody with me? So we need to actually write a function for that. Because right now we don't have that. There's no access for that. Cool? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm in my country struct. I'm in my country struct. I'll create a function. I'll call it get sections. It's going to be a static function because I'll call it on the type. So I'll simply say country.getSections. So this is a class method. Or a type method, sorry. So this is a type method. Okay. We have data. We'll first sort our data. We'll sort our countries. So we'll say sorted countries. We'll sort our countries. So as we go through the country, right, we know the continent. Everybody with me, right? So we'll sort continents, sorry. This is sort continents. We'll sort our array based by continent. So here we have our countries array that's sorted, and we'll sort it based by continent. We'll sort it ascending by continent. What does this do? Goes through our countries array and sorts all the elements by continent. This is the first step. Part of your lab this week is going to be to write a function very similar to this one to create an array of arrays. So really pay attention here. Ask all the questions you need to ask. But any array you have, somebody could tell you, hey, create an array of arrays based on a specific logic. In our case, we're creating an array of arrays based on continents. Everybody with me, right? I could say create me an array based on country. So if we have multiple Jamaicas, we have a section Jamaica. I could say create me an array of countries based on the name, right? Where we have section A listing the countries where they're A, right? Everybody with me? So you could be given a question, create some array of arrays given some prompt. In our case, we want to create an array of arrays where the sections is the continent. Okay? So we need to go through code and write that. So here we have our sorted continents because we need to first sort our continents. Next, we'll create a sections array. Let's just call it sections array. Do you have a question, sir?
The next example is confirm A less than B.
This particular one here where we say less than, you mean? It says ascending. So ascending means A to Z. So A would be Africa. Africa would come first. Right? So here, let's put some more notes here. So less than means ascending. Example A to Z. Right? Cool. And more than means descending. Example Z to A. Does that answer your question, Eric? Okay, cool. So ascending, descending, and here we have our sections array. Now let's see how we're going to create the sections array. Our sections array is going to be an array of arrays. We know how many arrays we have in that array. We'll use the sections, we'll use the sorted countries to figure out how many sections we have. Let's see what that looks like. So here we use array initializer. We'll use repeating. We'll create an array of arrays using the repeating syntax. What are we creating? We're creating an array of countries. For now, let's put in 0 here. And let me create something else. I'll create titles or continent titles. We need to know how many titles we have, how many continents we have. So here I will simply say create a set. Again, I'm using a set here so I don't have multiple Africas if they do show up. All right, so here we have our countries. I'll simply say countries dot map, our favorite closure. Countries dot map, continent titles. Thank you. It's a set, it's unique. I will map over my countries. And what am I looking for here? I'm looking for continent. So this returns us a string, right? I map over my continent, which is a string. It returns us a string. And this guy is an array. I could just make this a set, right? We'll go over the code line by line. All right. Let's go over the first 3 lines. What's happening? First line, we say we want to sort our continents, right? We want to have our continents sorted. We want to have a continents array that's sorted. Why sorted? We want to go through it where, for example, we have 3 countries where they're from Africa. We put them in a bucket. Next country, we have Africa, we have Asia, for example. We have 5 countries in Asia. We put them in a bucket. That's why we sort them. We sort them because right now they're not sorted. If we look at our array, this is North America. That's not sorted. The next one is South America. It's not sorted. Do we see that? So when I sort it, I know I'm going through it chronologically. I'm able to put it into buckets chronologically. So that's an important step there. Make sure the thing you're doing is sorted. As you're going through that array, you could put them in the correct bucket. And when that continent changes, you increase your index or you increase your bucket. In our example here, anybody knows how many continents we have? No, and yeah, we have 7. But in our particular, our data set, how many continents should we have? Like for example, how many on line 40, what should be my continent titles count? About 5, right? Let's actually verify that before we continue. Because no point of writing code if we don't know what's going on. So here we currently have continents titles that count. We currently have continents in our data. All right, let's test that code out. Everybody typed out our 3 lines here? No? Okay, the first one sorts it. The second one basically makes a set out of all our continent names. So if we have 5 Africas and we create a set, how many Africas do we have? 1, right? Perfect. 41 basically creates an array of arrays. We're not done yet. We'll go over line 41 when we come back. But one thing I want to check and confirm is how many continents we have. So let's go ahead and confirm that. So we'll see. Line 40 is the section titles. Like how many sections do we have? We need to find out how many sections we have. How many arrays we're going to be creating. The first one is this one here. This one here is mapping through every element. It gets the continent from that country, and we make a set from it. For example, if we have 5 Americas, our set returns 1 America. So at the end, we'll have unique continent titles. This particular line here creates unique continent titles. Yes? Why don't we just return sorted continents? It will get rid of the duplicates, which happens on line 42. Line 42 gets rid of duplicates. If we do that, we're going to get rid of some of the data, actually, like some countries altogether. You see what I'm saying? What we're trying to do is put buckets. We're trying to use the titles as the continent names, and then go through each array and add it to the correct continent. Yes, that's where we headed. All right, so step 1, we currently have, let's test our data. And here, just print out the continent. So continents is continent titles. A mini, more of that will make sense as we continue. Cool? All right, so let's test out our code and we'll come back. So do we have all the code so far? Yes, go ahead. We are not done with the repeating part. We'll talk about the repeating part when we come back. The only thing I want to test now is our logic correct so far, right? There's some to-dos here. We're not done with the repeating part. The repeating part is where we create array of arrays, an empty bucket of array of arrays. In that empty bucket, we'll have, if it's 4 continents, we'll have 4 empty arrays in that empty bucket. Okay? All right. Can we go to the view controller? Can we go over to the view controller? Okay, so we go to the view controller here, go to view did load, and let's just test out view did load of the first view controller. And here we just testing, actually not even here. Let's not do it here. Go to the continents view controller instead. Continents view controller in view did load. Test continent section. Continents view controller, view did load. In view did load, simply call country dot get sections. Simply call country dot get sections in our view did load for continents view controller and run it. Okay, to actually get our view did load to run, we need to click on the second tab. So click on the second tab to get your view did load function to run here. We currently have 5 continents. Did everybody get 5 continents? I want to confirm before I move on. I'm sorry, say that again. Oh yeah, that's fine. You want me to go back to the country, right? Did everybody get 5 continents?
Yes.
Did you click on your second tab? You have to click on the second tab in order for view did load of our second view controller to get called. Did everybody get 5 continents? How many continents you got?
0.
0. Okay. 0. All right. Let's continue and let's overview what's happening here. Yulia, did you get 5 continents? Okay. Let's overview what's happening. What we want to do, the objective of this function, the objective of our get section function, the objective of it is to create an array of arrays, right? We do that by using the continent name, by using the continent name as the section for the country that belongs in it, right? So this is the objective of that particular function here, get sections. What does get sections do? Get sections needs to know how many sections it has. That's step 1. How many sections do we have, right? Here we tested our code. The first thing we did, we sorted our continents. Oh, sorry, we sorted our countries. This should really be sorted countries. That's a little confusing. Well, sorted continents is better. We sorted our countries based by continent. Does that make sense? We have an array, it's unsorted. Why is it unsorted? We all put in our own countries unsorted. I'm from North America, I'm from South America, I'm from Africa, I'm from Asia, whatever it is. Step 1, create a sorted array where it's sorted based by continent. This is step 1. So far, so good. Any questions about that? Any questions about step 42? Line 42. All right. Next step, we need to know how many sections we have. How do we find out how many sections we have? We use our arrays, our countries array, we map over it, right? We map over it and we return the continent name. So this basically returns an array of strings where the strings are continent names. So in the array, I'll have duplicates, correct? In that array, I'll have duplicates. I'll have multiple North Americas, I'll have multiple Africas, whatever it is, right? That's not helpful for our set or for our sections. We don't want to have duplicates in our sections. That doesn't make a section unique. The section needs to be unique. So what we do, we use a set on our array. So now we took out any duplicate from our sections array. Everybody with me so far? So now our continent titles, it's unique. We have 5 in there. We printed what the 5 looked like. We said we have North America, South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. So far, so good? All right. The next step later in the afternoon will be to use array repeating where the count is, what should the count be? Right? You quickly said it's not 5 because we don't want to hard code 5. What should count be? Continent titles that count. Right? Very good. What does that do for us? That basically creates an array of arrays where they're empty. This is what it does. How many elements does this array have? How many elements does that array have on line 49? How many arrays? 5, correct? We have 5 empty arrays. Each array is a country array, right? So what this function is doing, be very careful to this function. It's a very important function. Array repeating, it repeats or it creates 5 empty arrays of 5 country arrays. It creates 5 empty country arrays. Everybody with me? Why do we need 5 country arrays? Because we know we have 5 sections. We know we have 5 sections. So we create 5 empty arrays. Right? We create 5 empty arrays. Our next step later will be, after lunch here, our next step will be to iterate through our countries array and add to the relevant section, right? So when we finish doing that, then we could simply return section array. Look at that, it's an array of arrays. Do we see that? Country, array of arrays. We have double square bracket. So this is what we return at the end. After lunch, we'll go back to this. So we return a sections array at the end, but we'll come back on that method. And we'll stop here for now. Update your return. So it returns an array of arrays of country, like that. So update your sections, your get sections method to return an array of arrays. And make sure you return section array at the end. And what are we doing on line 47? We created 5 empty buckets. Right? So here we created 5, well, let me not put 5 because that could change. We created, put 5 for now. Put 5 empty buckets or 5 empty arrays of type country. Amini, does that help you, the comments, right? So we know where we headed after lunch, right? The repeating? Oh, this guy? Oh. Oh, got it. Okay. Again, this is one of those topics you really have to pay attention for. So we'll come back on a full stomach, right? And continue on it. We'll go back through it. Obviously, the objective of it is to create our sections, right? So at the end, we'll have our sections, then we could use it on our table view. Cool? So I'll stop here. Any questions before we stop? All right.